Now, the first thing that I want to tell you about following Christ is that we need to know the cost. And let me read verses 28 to 30 again. For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he's laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and is not able to finish. Every decision carries a cost and a consequence. Every decision, no matter what it is. Some are big costs and consequences, some are small costs and consequences. So let's say that you're planning to migrate to a country. And just to be completely random, let's say you're trying to migrate to Canada, okay? So you will evaluate the pros and the cons if you're migrating to Canada. So you look at the economic possibilities, the educational possibilities, the safety of a country, the quality of life, the standard of living, the cost of living. You will look at if there's any language that you need to learn. So if you had to learn French, for example, in order to move to Canada, you may think twice about it. Or if it's a country that has very high crime and terrorism, then you may think twice about it. So when you make the decision to migrate to Canada, you sat and looked at the pros and the cons. Following Jesus has a cost. Now, when I moved to the US from India, there are some consequences that came out of it, right? Back in India, it's a much more laid-back lifestyle. Everything is at a slower pace. Nobody's rushing around. We're not working our tails off, all day, every day, and then somehow get to the weekend like we do in America and over here. Get to the weekend, and then before you know, the weekend is gone and we are back into the grind again. That's not how it is in India. So when I planned to come to US, I had to weigh the pros and the cons. And the cons were that, well, I won't be able to see my family as often. I won't be able to meet my childhood friends as often. And I won't be a part of that laid-back lifestyle as much as I would like to. Now, Jesus wants us to count the cost when we follow him. He wants us to evaluate the cost and the consequence. People think that, when you follow a religion, it is just a mindless thing. You just have to have blind faith. But that is not what the Christian faith is about. The Christian faith is about considering carefully the consequences, considering carefully the cost. The word count that is used here is actually from the word pebbles, because in those days they used to count with pebbles. And the only other place in the New Testament where this word count is used is in Revelation chapter 13, when it says, calculate the number of the beast. It's a human number. Calculate the number of the beast. His number is 666. So it is a calculation that we need to do when we decide to follow Christ. And Jesus gives his followers the option to choose him or leave him. Turn your Bibles, if you will, to John chapter 6 and verse 60. Let me just set the context of this verse. Earlier on in this chapter, Jesus fed 5,000 men with women and children with 5 loaves of bread. And then later on in the chapter, he talks about how he's the bread of life. And when you come to the end of the chapter, this is what happens. In verse 60, when many of his disciples heard it, they said, this is a hard saying. Who can listen to it? But Jesus, knowing in himself that his disciples were grumbling about this, said to them, do you take offense at this? Then what if you were to see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? Verse 66, after this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer walked with him. So Jesus said to the 12, do you also want to go? What could Jesus have done? He could have said, hey guys, sorry. I am so sorry. I didn't mean to be so offensive. Come back. Let me revise my sermon and give you an updated, cleaner version. No. He turned to the 12 who were his disciples and said, do you also want to leave? You see, the Christian faith is a calculated decision that we make. Following Christ is a calculated decision. It's not about emotional, energy, and somehow you are coaxed into making a decision. No, it is a decision for the long haul, and there is a cost to it, and each person should carefully consider the cost.